Today's teardown is quite the doozy. And no, we're not tearing down an old Duesenberg. Sorry if I let you guys down. Instead, we're tearing down this, a 3-liter Duramax, the LM2. This is out of a 2020 Silverado 1500. And the reason I own this is that I bought this engine, like I buy almost all of the cores that come in, with a bunch of other engines, a whole gaggle of them. So that generally means that I don't get details. Now, the fact that I own this is a little questionable in itself. Even though I rightfully purchased this, I did a little sleuth work that made me second guess why this engine is even here. Now, you guys should already know why this engine is here because it came with a bonus torque converter, which would be a great thing if it didn't mean that the engine's locked up. Now, I knew this engine was bad. I'm never going to complain about getting a bad engine in here because that's the goal. I don't want to tear down a good one. However, that means that I am now tasked with getting this apart. So the reason why I question my ownership of this engine is that I did a little bit of sleuth work. Normally when I get an engine with no information, I look for a VIN, I look for some tags, some writing, and usually it doesn't amount to anything that I can use to let you guys know what it's out of. In this case, I was unsatisfied with not knowing the mileage of a 4-year-old engine. That's preposterous. So I looked this thing over with a fine-tooth comb and I found a special something. I found this, an engine number, but this is not just a normal engine number. So let me help you guys out here. 1K indicates it's out of a Chevy truck. And I'm not sure what the C means, but that could be where this engine was assembled. And then the rest of this is the last 8 of a VIN. So then I called my local GM dealership and I asked them to complete the puzzle, and they gave me the entire VIN number. Engines have serial numbers and casting numbers all over the place. They don't always decode to something useful. In this case, I had looked at similar vehicles to get an overall idea of their VIN structure, so I had an idea of what to look for, and then I found that number, which I suspected was the end of a VIN. I called the dealer. They confirmed, yes, that is the last 8 of a VIN. Here's the rest of their VIN. And that is actually a 2020 Silverado 1500 with the 3-liter Duramax diesel, the LM2 engine RPO. So that all checked out. And now, armed with the entire VIN, like any good detective, I'm not a very good detective, I did a Carfax on it. And the Carfax is the entire reason why I'm questioning the fact that this engine is even in my presence. Why do I even own this? Now, I did buy this legitimately from a business that I buy engines from all the time. It's not off the back of a truck or even out of the front. Well, I guess it's technically out of the front of a truck. Regardless, this wasn't some shady deal. This is one of the more trustworthy places I buy engines from. Why did it not go back to the manufacturer? This vehicle still has less than 50,000 miles on it. The truck that this engine is out of is still running around somewhere with very low miles. I suspect, based on the Carfax, this was replaced somewhere in the mid 46,000 mile range, which is entirely still under warranty. These trucks came with a 5-year, 60,000 mile powertrain warranty. So why was this not covered? Well, we don't know that it wasn't covered, but we can assume it wasn't because if it was, it would go back to the manufacturer. Now, there are situations where a manufacturer won't cover a warranty. If it's been tuned or modified, if it's been abused or neglected, or maybe it sucked in water, or maybe it was wrecked or something else happened to it. Those are all reasons why warranties get rejected on, the claims get rejected on things like this. But even then, when you buy a new engine for one of these at the dealership, it comes with a huge thousands of dollars core charge. So why did this not go back? There is only one reason that I can suspect that this engine wouldn't have gone back to the dealership or gone back to the manufacturer, and that is they blew this engine up, it was ruined some way or another, and then they bought a used engine and sent this back as a core. That's about the only way I can suspect this engine is here. At least that's where I'm going to hang my hat. First, let's confirm the initial claim that the engine is bad. Okay, it doesn't turn. Now this obviously doesn't have spark plugs, otherwise we'd be doing that next. It does have glow plugs, but someone has removed them. but it still has injectors, still has all the injection pump stuff on it. I think we're going to start on the other side of the engine because it just looks easier. If you're wondering why the engine is on the stand backwards, it is not because the torque converter is still there, although that is a reason why I would do that. It is because the chain is at the back of the engine. So is the flywheel and torque converter. So I don't know how fun this is going to be, but you're going to be along for the ride. Now, normally the first thing I do would be to pull the spark plugs, but it's a diesel. It doesn't have spark plugs. So I guess we're just going to start taking parts off and see what we see. We're going to start over here. All right, I kind of doubted the miles that the Carfax showed, but look how nice some of this stuff is. A lot of times these engines are stored in really dirty, wet, nasty environments, so they don't always look like the miles. They don't always look clean when they're low. Next, we're going to unbolt the exhaust manifold. We're going to use the air for that. Ooh, sparks. And the turbo manifold and EGR valve are off. Next, we're going to work on this injector harness and then pull the injectors. Oh, that one's broken. Now, I can't really remember how these came out, but I remember they came out. This one's fighting me a little bit. All right. Now we have some injection lines.
Will you just relax? Hey, leave my camera alone.
Now we can unbolt the injectors. Beautiful, they come right out. Well, it's clear this thing's at least been wet a few times. A little bit of rust in here. And you can definitely see that on the injectors, but I don't see any destroyed tips. It's a shame that the one was broken, probably in packing or moving. Oh well, 5 good cores. Now I'm going to start working on some of these lines here. Stuff's looser. I've got some of these fuel line fittings. This one can stay on the pump. That one's just fine. Get these loose. Oh, we're leaking diesel. That's an expensive leak. All right, I think some of this can come off now. Now, I need to remove the dipstick. It's pretty early in the teardown. Hopefully it doesn't become a problem. Oh, yes. With great ease, it comes out. Let's see, I think this piece comes off here. So I think I need to remove this insulator so I have access to all the bolts. Maybe I could just pull the flaps back. Nope, this really should come off. Much better. Now we'll unbolt the intake. And we're off. Before I go peeking down the intake ports, let's get this fuel rail. Perfect. So there's not much to see in these. It's not horrifically gunky. It's not super clean. But with a low mileage engine, you know, how bad could it actually be? I mean, it's not a DI BMW engine, so it's bound to be pretty clean. I don't see any chunks of metal or anything indicating of some catastrophic situation. Obviously, something's wrong with this engine. The next part I'm going to remove is called the coolant control valve or coolant flow valve. And this is a very hot topic on the 3-liter Duramax owners group on Facebook. Yes, I'm in that group. I like to be in groups on different vehicles, even though I don't own them, because I like to learn. And a lot of people are waiting for this valve. This thing fails, throws it into limp mode, and then they have to clear the codes all the time. And apparently it's on back order, so it's really hard to get these. And I just looked up the part number on it right here, and it is in fact unbuyable in a quick search. So we're going to get this unbolted. I don't know anyone that wants to install a used one, so I don't know if it's got any value, but we're still going to get it off the engine intact. Get this harness out of the way. Did I miss one? I don't think so. Oh, I've got a hose that I need to remove. I'm just going to unbolt it from the pan. And we're off. Before we pull the valve cover, we've got a little bit of prep. That can hang out there. Can I just pull this up? Nope. Blue. I got all the bolts out, right? I feel like I got more than enough bolts out. Ah, yes. Well, let's see how clean this supposed 45,000 mile engine actually is. Oh, wow, that is really nice. I don't know that we've ever seen a diesel look that good inside. Yep, Yeah, I don't see anything. Chain still has tension on it. Not too little, not too taut. Here's a better look at the valve train. All the cam lobes look perfect. I don't see any buildup of junk or sludge pretty much anywhere on this engine. This thing is really spotless inside. I don't see anything broken in there. This is next. Next, the upper timing cover. I thought this may have a bolt boss that you could thread something into and it'll push it off, but we just got to pry it off. I'll just use the bolt for the tensioner. Look at how clean this is. I could eat off, I won't, but I could if I wanted to. I don't see any damage in here. Nothing's come apart. No indicators of anything terrible yet, except for just this giant torque converter on the front or back of the engine. All right, next I'm going to remove this little cover. Well, here's our first look at some of the oil in this thing. And I don't see any sparkles in it, which is really good. Everything looks pretty clean in here. Not a ton of wear on the chains or on the gears. I don't see anything wrong yet, but that doesn't mean much at this point. So normally I want to showcase the timing system. At least I did that on the last one of these LM2s I tore down. But in this case, we kind of have a slight problem which makes that improbable to do. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to get this unbolted. We'll get the injection pump off. We'll unbolt what we can here, get the cams out, and I think we can get the head off. If I can get the head off, then we'll flip it over. We'll make an attempt to pull the upper and lower oil pan, which is going to be an ordeal because there's a belt. I know, there's a belt at the back of this engine, and it goes into the oil pan to drive the oil pump, so that's going to be a little bit of work. It's fine. I'm just going to give this a little brap real quick. Loctite. These cracked loose. These are also Loctited in. Always start with the easy one. No, don't do that. Don't do what I did. Loctite is winning. I think the fact that the chain's still under tension is a small problem. Yep, let's take the tension out of that chain. All right, we're going to loosely put those back in. See if we can walk these off. Look at that. I did that so that we're not flinging parts all over the shop. That is a terrible idea. We never do that on this channel. Now, I am sure that these still rotate, but I really don't feel like crashing valves into pistons and doing a bunch of damage. Let's see here, we can get this. Look at that beautiful chain. Nice secondary chain. See, I think that just bolts to the head. We can get that unbolted next. Now I've lightly threaded the bolt back into this injection pump. We're just going to give it a little zip, zip. Is it going to work? I don't know. Are we going to do it? Yep. Oh yeah, it worked. There's the bolt. There's the injection pump. Now I know exactly what you're thinking. Eric, you disconnected the valve train. You should see if the engine turns over. And I am with you. But let's be real here. It ain't looking so hot. I'm going to go with no. It is in fact still locked up. Okay. On to the cams. Now is that time of night where we start cramming the cam caps off. Getting better. Well, the journals look pretty good. I don't see any major damage on this side. A little bit of scratches. It's really not terrible. We've definitely seen way worse on this channel. I think that's the worst one right there. And the cams don't look too bad either. Absolutely serviceable. Nothing jumping out at me. But some of these cam caps have a little bit of damage. That one in particular. That happens from dirty oil, metal in the oil, hard material in the oil that's not supposed to be there, or if it runs dry. This is the first signs of damage that I've seen inside this engine, if you ignore the fact that it still has a torque converter on it. And this cam still looks pretty good. A little bit of wear and damage right there. I think it's still usable. One design feature of this engine that I do really like is it uses this removable cam plate or carrier. I don't know what GM calls it. But basically, if it trashes cams and cam journals and the caps, you can replace it without replacing the cylinder head. In fact, you can do that without even pulling the cylinder head, which is nice. So now we're going to crack all these bolts loose so that we have access to the head bolts.
Blue.
It comes right off. Before we take the head bolts out, we have a few bolts around the perimeter of the head. Now it is time to crack these head bolts loose. If I remember right, these were pretty tight. Yeah. Wow. The brakes are on my stand. Let's get the big bar. Nope, better to pull towards you. I think. We're gonna rotate this a little further so I can get some more leverage. Hopefully no rockers go flying. What's the worst that could happen? Don't answer that. It's so violent. Hopefully this little guy can finish the job. Will you stop hissing at me? I can hear that head gasket releasing. Look at them big things. Gigantic. What is this, a diesel or something? For you that care, I just weighed the head bolts. This had 8 pounds worth of head bolts. It's crazy. Crazy. Hopefully this just lifts right up. Huh. Oh, I see some bad stuff. Yep. All right, well, let's see if we can remove this head gasket. You guys see anything in this area? You know what? I'll leave the head gasket on and show you. So this cylinder is just beautiful. Well, it's not perfect, okay. It's not terrible. Got a little burn mark. It's better than this one. So this one got a little on the warm side. The piston is very melty. You can see the fused aluminum to the cylinder wall. And then, if you notice, its neighbor is so much worse. It torched a hole through the bore. That is incredible. The amount of temperature it takes. You know how many degrees were in here? There must not have been any room left. I mean, look at how melted that piston is. And, of course, it breached head gasket. You can see it was between there. Now, this one is rusted up, and I suspect that's the reason, and that's the reason why this engine won't turn over. There could be more damage. We don't know yet. But I bet this is from coolant, from lifting a head or breaching a head gasket. Or maybe it got rained in. Either way, this is bad. It definitely looks like it's sat on its side. Let's go look at the cylinder head and then we'll peel the gasket off. So here's the cylinder head. And it looks fine until it doesn't. Right there, you can see it was breached. And look at all the aluminum deposits on the valves, combustion chamber. That's not good. I would suspect this head would be serviceable as long as it's not too warped. You would need to go to the machine shop to see. I have no idea what the value of these parts are. They're still pretty modern. All right, let's peel this head gasket off, if possible. So that side doesn't look too bad. So it's definitely breached on the cylinder head side. Doesn't look like it cut a groove in the block, but at least two very melted pistons. All right, we got to do our test. It can't be a solid teardown without some science behind it. I'd like to say it was a perfect score, but this is not perfect. So several months ago, I tore down a very rusted up 351 Windsor, and I made mention that if you guys wanted to send me some Evaporust, I would try it out on the channel. I didn't get a chance to try it out on that thing yet. It is still here. That's a future Eric thing. But I am going to call it a night for tonight. That doesn't mean the video is ending. It just means that I'm going to pour some Evaporust in these two cylinders to try to break some of this rust up. And we'll come back tomorrow when I finish this teardown, and we'll see if that helped us or if it did nothing. Now, I know you guys might think it would ruin the block, but believe me, it's not going to do any more damage than this engine already has. There's a hole in the bore. So we're going to pour some of this in there. Drink up. We're just going to let it sit just like that. And hopefully it eats away all that rust. I'm not really worried about this little bit in this cylinder. I'm really concerned with these two. You can see it's already foaming up. It's already going to work. I'm going home and that stuff's starting to work. All right, here we are 24 some odd hours later, and this has had a chance to do its magic. Ooh, we can kind of clean that piston up a little bit. We're going to just soak this stuff up. Let me get some more of these wipes. That did a thing or three. You can definitely tell where the line of Evaporust was. This looks so much worse before. I think we have a shot at getting this to turn over without taking this thing apart. I did not put any there. It's going to be fine. We can power through that stuff. Let's see if we can break her free. Well, maybe not. Let's try going the other way. Okay, so of course it's not quite that simple, and I think that means the next step is for us to turn this thing upside down. Let's roll this thing over. See if it's got any juice in it. Not a lot. Well, I can tell you someone's been in here because a lot of these bolts are missing. Some of these are missing too. I bet they tried to get in here to get it unstuck, so who knows what we're going to find. Oh, the great reveal. Oh, that didn't really take much, did it? Oh, there's lots of sparkles. And there's stuff missing. Why? What could you possibly use that? Oh, that's not good. So this is normally where the oil pump sits. And it is, in fact, not present. And I think what they did was they tried to take this pan off, but they couldn't get this off because the belt, the oil pump belt, runs in this location right here. And that's probably what's keeping the pan on, if I were to guess. Lots of anti-seize. I am starting to doubt the condition of the rotating assembly. So the condition of this drive right here, this little coupler, is pretty bad, especially for the low miles. Now this connects to the oil pump, and I noted on the last one of these I tore down that there was some significant wear, but I think this is even worse than the last one. All right, now we're going to make a slight effort to remove the upper oil pan, which looks like there's just got a couple bolts here. Are there any more? I don't see any more. I think they got them all out. Let's try prying on it and see what happens. And that belt is going to hang us up unless it's broken. Okay. It is absolutely the belt that's the problem now. This is fun. So in order to get the upper oil pan off, you have to get the belt off. To get the belt off, you have to get the timing cover off. To get the timing cover off, you have to get the flywheel off. To get the flywheel or flex plate off, you have to get the torque converter off. You see the situation that we're in. I have to get to the belt without damaging anything, which I don't know how that's going to happen. We're going to do our best because I don't like breaking parts unless it's a water pump or a chain guide. Let's see, can I, oh wait. I think I see how we can do this. Let's get the light and see. Yep, it looks like the belt is going to be a sacrificial belt. Oh yeah, we got this. So my plan is to get as much of a gap between the block and the upper pan so I can get a Sawzall blade in there and carefully cut the belt. I don't know that most mechanics have a Sawzall in their toolbox, but I'm not a mechanic, so I guess I get a pass. I think I got through it. Don't make me cut both sides. Yeah. There's the pulley. And here's our first look inside the crankcase of this thing. The good news is I don't see anything that's discolored like it spun a bearing or ate a bearing or something. All this stuff looks pretty reasonable. But when I was looking at the belt, which I cut, here's where I cut the belt. It also has this right here. That's not good. Now, I don't know what they did to try to get this pan off before. Obviously, they were prying on it. You can see there's some pry marks right here. You know, some of the places that get engines like this, they do whatever it takes. And there's my nice clean cut to get stuff apart for inspections. And sometimes maybe that's what happened here. The rest of the belt looks like it's in pretty good shape. I don't see a ton of damage. All the teeth are present. At 40-something thousand miles, it better be. And here's the other side of this pan. There's the, that sounds bad. That bearing sounds rather dry. Nothing crazy. Just an upper oil pan with a bearing and pulley built in. At this point, what I'm going to do is start unbolting the rods and pistons. Try to get all the rods and pistons out. I know some of them are going to fight us from rust and maybe melty stuff. It's fine. We'll do what we can until we'll consistently check to see if that crank will spin. And once we get the crank to spin, we can get the torque converter off, yada yada, the rest of this can come apart. We're going to start at the front of the engine. Hopefully these play pretty nice. Oh yeah. Very fortunate that the configuration of this engine allows me to pull all the rod caps without turning the crank over. What is happening? I think the position of the crank won't allow this to come out. Yes, that is correct. So that one's just going to have to hang out, and I bet you that's going to be the same story for this one, and this one. Neat. At this point, I'm just going to crack them all loose, zip all the caps off, and we'll check to see if the crank turns over. Oh no. That is not plumb on there. We'll have to do something else. Let's get the rest of these Well, we know we can get this one out. Ooh, that doesn't want to come out. All right, now we're going to attempt the middle two cylinders. Got a wobble extension on here. We're going to hope for the best and expect the worst. That was the worst. I got one pop out of it. Nope, that's not good. Let's try this with a little different socket here. Nope, that feels bad. Let's do the neighbor here. That sounds wrong. That's not what I meant, honey. All right, so this one, no problem. This one, problem. Let's get the easy one. Always start with the easy one. Very good. All right, let's zip the rest of these loose. Oh, there's a socket there. Well, this one already fell up in the bore. Sounds weird to say. Before we do anything else, let's see if this crank turns over. Come on, you can do it. No, why not? Okay, let's try to knock those out of their bores. Oh, that one fell out. Oh, wow. These are spectacular. I think this is our offending unit right here. You would think, I would think, maybe not you, but I would think that I could turn it over by now, but I can't. These two pistons right here, we're going to hammer on the hammer. We moved it like at least a millimeter. I'm like waiting to be able to grab the torque converter and rotate, but I think I'm going to be waiting for a while. At this point, the crank has no reason not to turn over unless there's bearing damage, right? Oh, I moved it. It moved. It moved. That's a success. And short-lived one at that. Oh, it's because of that one right there. Okay, let's see what we can knock out. I think we can get this one and this one. We can just get one of these out. We're coming out of the top of the board. I really don't want to rocket this thing at the ground here. There's one more. So I'm no math whiz, but I think I need to rotate the crank this away to get that out and that out. Let's see if we can get it to turn that far. So far, I've barely been able to budge it. Old Blue's getting a workout tonight. Something's still wrong here. You know what? I'm going to do what you guys are all yelling at the monitor or your phones to do. I'm going to loosen the main caps. If this doesn't do it, well, this will do it. We got to have some faith here. That ought to do it. I guess it's time for a new air impact. Now the crank has no reason why it wouldn't turn. Ah, yes. Very good. Now we can finally knock these out. Now I need to see if I can get the torque converter off. Why is it still unfavorably stuck? This engine's pretty screwed up. All right, I think I can get it out now. Yes. This is going to be a lengthy process. All right, we only have 5 more to go or so. That worked pretty well. There is one left. I can already sense bad things are going to happen, so I'll put myself against it. That way I get hurt all the way. Leave that there. I can stay there. Torque converter is off. Next, we can remove the flex plate. That's loud, real loud. Shouldn't have done that. Oh, it's so much easier now. And now we can remove the timing cover. I think I got them all. See, I think I can just probably, nope, can't just probably. And there we go. Now I can start to tear this apart. There's the tensioner. Now the crank's going to come out with the chain. I do have to take this out. All right, now the crank is just about ready to come out. This thing's zipping apart nice. The next thing we need to do is contend with this plate, which this is going to be a problem because of the engine stand itself. I'm going to have to unbolt 2 of the bolts, this one and this one, so that it sags that way, so I can get that off. Bolt number 1 and bolt number 2. All right, I think I can pull it out with the crank. This is going to be a problem here. It's got a dowel that's going to be in the way. Ah, that'll do it. I'll get these off. Oh. That's bad. Now, can I do this? Should I do this? I can't do this. I need blue. It definitely comes out there. Definitely comes up there. All right. Just wanted to break the seal, that's all. Yep. So I'll show you the entirety of the crank in a minute, but we still have a bearing shell set that won't come off. This here is probably, maybe the reason, oh yeah, that's not good. Well, let's start off with the rod bearings. They don't look too terrible, but the upper shell definitely has quite a bit of wear, especially for such low miles. Now that could be because of what happened to this engine. Oops, these are flipped. Now I can breathe. And now for the fun, the rods and pistons. So the rods, they're all pretty decent. Nothing's bent, nothing's destroyed. The rods are in pretty good shape. But the pistons, well, this one, it looks excellent. Very little skirt wear. I'd say that passes the test. And then that's melted. That's really melted. I tried to clean this up, but it's just char. Lots of skirt wear. That's probably from all the melted aluminum. That's pretty bad. But it is nothing compared to this. Look at that thing. Torched right through all the rings. And what I would suspect is that the material from this piston is what caused the damage to the main bearing shell that we just pried off the crankshaft. This thing is ate up pretty bad. This is definitely one of the worst looking non-shattered pistons we've seen in quite some time. In fact, maybe ever. I don't know that we've ever seen one torched this badly. But we're not out of the woods yet. This one appears to be okay. It's pretty grody looking, but a lot of that's from the moisture. This was one of the ones that was pretty rusty. And then we get to this one. And look, this one's just a smidge melty. I don't care if it's a little melty or a lot melty. Melty is melty. It's bad. It's pretty incredible. And then finally, I think this one survived. I don't know that I would use any of them in an engine. The rods I wouldn't have any problem with, but one thing I think is worth mentioning, the last video I did on one of these engines, the very first one I ever did, all of the pistons were stamped by the valves and they created valve reliefs. And a few of you said that's just how they are. Here are the main bearings. And this one is pretty torn up. I don't think it's spun. It doesn't look like it spun. But this is probably why the crank wouldn't turn over. The rest of these don't look half bad. The crankshaft would have been okay if it wasn't for this journal right here, which is the coinciding journal for that ugly main bearing shell. Now, some of this could just be aluminum transfer, and it might clean up, or it may need to go to a machine shop. I don't really know what the value... We haven't sold any of the parts from the last one because we haven't cleaned them or listed them. We're really backed up. But if this ends up being a part that's really cheap new, this one will likely end up in the scrap bin. Now, I think it's no surprise that the chewed up main bearing could have a partially clogged oil supply. That's no bueno. Now it's time for the boring part. Sorry, guys. Sorry. So this one doesn't look great. This one's got some pretty significant rust stains. Its neighbor, however, is worse, and it doesn't get better from here. It gets worse. Because this was one that had a melted piston. But this isn't even the bad one. This is the bad one. That is torched all the way through the bore. Look at all that aluminum that's been transplanted. This block, this is scrap material. Unless somebody wants to make something out of it. I just can't see someone going through all the effort to fix this. That one's got some aluminum transfer as well. And this one's probably the best of the bunch. Now look, I know some of you might have felt cheated because, as you can see, the water pump is missing. It's actually right here. So I had to remove the water pump to get it on the stand, but that's where the water pump goes. Wait a minute. No, that's where the water pump goes. So I did some digging because I wanted to know what it would cost to replace an engine in one of these trucks. And I'm not talking about the labor or even the cost of a brand new engine, but when you buy a new engine from pretty much any manufacturer, whether it's reman or new, they almost always charge you a core charge, which you then get refunded back when you send in the old one. And sometimes it's $1,000, sometimes it's $500. But you guys want to take a guess at how much I found this one to be? It's not $1,000, it's not $2,000 or $3,000. or $4,000. It's $5,000 from what I found. $5,000. So the likelihood that the place I bought the engine from paid more than that for this bad engine is, well, that's just absurd, because I didn't pay anywhere near that, and the place that I bought this from is in business and they do quite well. So they didn't pay $5,000 for this engine to sell it to me for hundreds of dollars. However, in a situation where you'd buy a used engine, you wouldn't have to pay some astronomical core charge. Our yard management systems have a core value assigned to them if there is a value to that engine, and you get to see all the different buyers. And in this case, that's only a few $100, which is a lot more likely the case. Now, replacing an engine on a 3 or 4-year-old truck with 40-something thousand miles with a used engine is not really a crazy idea, because most of them have 30 or 40,000 miles on them, and finding a used engine with low miles is relatively easy. It's not like you're trying to find a 30 or 40,000 mile 20-year-old engine. So that's just a theory as to how that place got it. I have no proof of this whatsoever. But what happened to this engine? Well, this was a fueling issue. That's what melts pistons on diesel engines. I'm not a diesel guy, but I've been around enough blown up diesel engines to know that this was a fueling related issue. And I'm not going to point my finger at the injectors, because the likelihood that 3 of them would fail at precisely the same time is unlikely, especially considering the miles. However, if it had a failing diesel injection pump, I could kind of see that. If it ran out of time, if somehow it jumped time and then it was injecting at the wrong time, it could do this kind of damage. Or someone could have put gasoline in it. It's just an idea. Now, in a situation like that, most manufacturers would go, that's not our fault, that's not our responsibility, you're on your own. And that would make sense as to why the engine was replaced with a used one. Again, I'm guessing here. These are all just wild theories. I'm not going to call the place on Carfax to find out. But if you're in the Arizona area and you have a 2020 RST with a 3-liter diesel, it's 4-wheel drive crew cab, and you want to shoot me a message with the end of your VIN, see if it matches up, I'd love to put this story together. Otherwise, we may never know. Now, this thing was pretty tore up. There's not a lot of good parts on it from the inside. Lots of parts on the outside are going to be good, so that's pretty good. I'm glad I didn't get a bare engine. And a lot of people talk a lot of smack on some of these late model engines. Oh, I got news for you guys. Everything that's new is complicated, especially if you're going to compare it to older stuff, and most of us inherently do. This isn't really that terrible of an engine to work on. This came apart relatively easy, especially considering the situation that it was in. I don't hate it. This isn't an engine that I have some vendetta against. I think the people that own these trucks really enjoy them, much like most of the other engines I tear down on this channel. But of course, people will break literally anything. We've torn down some of the most reliable engines on this channel that have been blown up so badly it makes you wonder how or why. Some of these questions we just won't answer. So if you'd like to buy any parts out of this engine, whether you want it for your desk or for some reason you would like to fix one of these engines, I have everything from this one and the last one. And if you don't want to buy anything off of this one and you want to buy something off anything else I've torn down, you can go to importapart.com. It does take a bit of time for those parts to make it to the website, so the best bet is to email us, and I'll leave our email at the top of the video description. We also have an M275 twin turbo V12 in this S600. That is bad. You know what that means? I don't know when, but it's coming. I really hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.